I grew up and where I ministered for just under 20 years in the inner city. And we talked about the phrase messy church. So you should all smile. Because here's a beautiful term for you. There's this glorious tension, where there is order in God's household, because the Holy Spirit is a spirit of order, but there is also freedom. And so in that tension, it can end up being a little bit messy. All right, but do not fear. The Lord is near. Okay, the Lord is in the house. And this morning, we're going to continue in this beautiful series called The Joy of the Lord. And it's a very deep understanding. And the reason why is because so many of us get caught in the meanings of the word happy. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. I want to be happy. And happiness doesn't even come close to understanding what joy is. And so for me this morning, this is the excitement, because when you get joy, then you're going to get suffering. You'll get the cost. You'll get all that happens if you and I can understand what the joy of the Lord is. So in this part 2, we can go to the next slide. I want to focus this morning on the joy of the Lord being our stronghold and shelter. So our joy, our choosing to joy, and we're going to look at that in a moment, becomes our safe place. That becomes our shelter. That's the place we run to in the storms of life. And we've been singing about that, and we've been testifying about that. And so today, the key verse that I want to build this all around is around Nehemiah 8 verse 10. So we're going to start with Nehemiah 8 verse 10, and then we'll move through some key texts in the Old and New Testament as we develop our understanding of the joy of the Lord being our stronghold and shelter. So let's look at this text. I've chosen it, I should have put it in brackets to make sure you understand. This is from the Amplified Version. The Amplified Version is the one my mother used. So it takes, because what often happens, the Hebrew has a very rich word. And sometimes the English put one word to it, but it's actually much more than just one word. So when you and I understand joy, or we understand strength, we don't even have an inkling of what the Hebrew means. And so I want to a little bit unpack that today, but let's read the text first. Then Ezra said to them, "Go your way, eat the rich festival food, drink the sweet drink." By the way, that is wine. Okay, just so that you get to understand this, okay? "And send portions to him for whom nothing is prepared. For this day is holy, sanctified, set apart to the Lord. And don't be worried, for the joy of the Lord is your strength and your stronghold." All right, so that's the Amplified Version. And you're going to see that I'm going to use a lot of pictures of the New Wine family. And I'm not using it in any particular way. It's just so that things that we have caught here that reflect what I want to share. I just love community. So that's why I use our pictures. They tell our story. And hopefully we will enjoy in that. So let's look at the word joy. So of course I want to focus on 2 particular words today. And the joy of the Lord is our stronghold and fortress. So the first word I want to focus on is the word joy. And it comes from the Hebrew word chedva. How's that, eh? Great word to remember. And it means not just joy, but a gladness and a rejoicing, almost linking into or leading into a celebratory dance. So that's the meaning. The deeper understanding is that chedva speaks about a true and lasting joy that comes from the Lord and is found in Him. Notice that, eh? Found in Him, not in circumstance, not in people or situations. Joy because of His grace and presence. In other words, the Old Testament understanding is we rejoice because He is. We rejoice because He is present. We rejoice that within Him is all the promises of God, is all the collection of what God has done and who He is. We rest in that. That's joy. That's in the Old Testament. Now, let's look at the word strength, and then we're going to put the two together. So the word strength comes from the Hebrew word maoz. Maoz. And you know what it means? This is gets it, limits it. So it means a fortified place. Hey, that's a strong place. It's secure. A stronghold, a place of refuge, and a source of strength. Now remember, it's saying that joy is that when we choose it. The deeper understanding is the joy that comes from the Lord when we embrace it, when we get it. It provides a shelter and a stronghold against life's difficulties. It can even be seen, the understanding of the word, as spiritual armor. So it's my defense against all that I'm experiencing and all that the world as such is throwing at me. Skev spoke about that. The world is evil. We have to say that. We speak about increasing wickedness. Hence why choosing joy is so critical in the season. So I want to illustrate what I've just shared about joy and strength. And we're going to look at two passages. The first one is from Habakkuk. And I'm saying that right. I've told you my story before, but maybe just for a bit of a gentle interlude this morning. I came to the ministry through a lot of major mistakes. And they all happened at different times. When I was an Anglican minister, as you know, for over 20 years. And each time the Lord, when the new season opened, it would open with another glorious mistake on Dave's part, some big ones of note. This particular one was an interesting one, so please bear the colloquial, because we are South Africans. So the first time I used this text, this is exactly the text I used, and I was preaching on a Sunday morning, and I wanted to refer to this incredible passage that my mom taught me. And I said it very quickly, and I said, I want to read from the book of Habakkuk. You're laughing because you're South African. You get what I'm saying. And I had another go at it, and it came out even better, as in terms of that phrase. Until the pastor on the other, my minister, my boss, said to me, David, just get on with it. So this morning, I want to read from Habakkuk, chapter 3 and verse 17 to 18 to illustrate this point. Though the fig tree, isn't this beautiful? Though the fig tree doesn't blossom, and though there is no fruit on the vine, though the yield of the olive fails, and the fields produce no food, though the flock is, though the flock is cut off from the Lord, from the fold, then there are no cattle in the stalls, yet I will choose to rejoice in the Lord. I will choose to shout in exaltation in the victorious God of my salvation. Now I want you to get this one. So in this particular verse, what we are saying is, that is circumstance, isn't it? That is the actions of people in my life. Maybe it is the tree that doesn't blossom. That is the vines that have no fruit. The olive crop that fails. Don't you know that? Have you had seasons? That is circumstance. That can be the situations. It can be the actions of people in your life. Yet, this understanding of the joy of the Lord is my strength. He's saying, yet I choose joy. I choose to know that He is present. I choose to rest in the one who is here, and I know who He is, and I know what He's done, and I know what His presence brings, no matter the circumstance. And when I choose that, he says here, I will choose to shout in exaltation in the victorious God of my salvation, my stronghold, my fortress, my safe place, when I say I choose to rejoice. Remember what Paul said? When I am weak in myself, then I am strong in Him. That's the principle of joy. So let's take another passage. Psalm 30, verse 5. This is a beautiful one. For His anger is but for a moment, but His favor is for a lifetime. Weeping may endure for a night, but a shout of joy comes in the morning. So let me illustrate it. I've got a big problem with my ears. I think about it a lot. It frustrates me because it limits my ministry. It limits my ability to communicate because I can't always hear when I look at you and you have to repeat yourself 4 to 5 times. And I pray every night. I believe I'm holding on. I'm casting aside doubt and fear and entrusting myself to the Lord, opening myself to the wildest possibilities in Jesus because His kingdom is present. And I do that every night, every single day. Weeping may endure for the night. But I wake every morning saying, I'll hear my wife when she speaks to me in the bed. And today I didn't because I can't hear. But the shout of joy is there because His presence is there. Weeping may continue to last for a night, but joy will come in the morning. We hold on because that's the principle of joy. What His presence brings. The joy of the Lord is my strength, translated through these texts, says this: no matter the external circumstances or the actions of people, I choose to rest in, I choose to rejoice or to joy in who the Lord is and what He has done. I choose to joy in His very presence. And the fact that He is here, what does that mean for me? My joy is in Him, not in the circumstance, not in the situation, not in what people are doing or not doing. Hey? I choose to position myself here. The minute I position myself there, He is a safe place for me. He is a fortress. He is a stronghold. He is a strong tower against all that will come against me. It's joy. The very choice of joy becomes my armor against all the devil's lies. Like he says, like in those moments, I'm just using my ears as an example. You've got your own. I'm just going to use mine. In the moments the devil will lie, Dave, you're 56 and you're not hearing. What are you going to do at 80 or beyond? Huh? That's the lie of the evil one. Why? Because he's shifting it. What does Jesus' presence mean? It means right today, His power to heal is here. We know the kingdom is and the kingdom is to come. But I hold on. That is the promise. His name and His presence is a stronghold and fortress because I choose to rejoice. And so, friends, holding this glorious revelation of the blessedness of the joy of the Lord before us, we now move into the New Testament, hey? And what Jesus said and what He promised about joy. Again, we're going to see how this joy becomes our strength. So again, we're going to now look, we looked at the Hebrew word for joy, which is chedva. Now we're going to look at the Greek word for joy. Okay. So the word for joy, and this is the constancy of Scripture. The word joy in the New Testament comes from the Greek word kara, and it means joy or gladness, and then it just adds this understanding of delight. The deeper understanding is Jesus is particular about this. It's an enduring joy. It's a persevering joy. If I may say, it's a resilient joy, hey? That believers can have. We can have this joy because of God's grace and presence. As Paul said, and His grace was not without effect in my life. God's grace and presence, it is an eternal state, not dependent on external circumstances or actions of others. Do you get that? You remember going back to Habakkuk? Though the olive crop fails, though the vines produce no grapes, though the olive crop fails, though there are no cattle in the stall, no sheep in the pen, in my life, in my situation, people do this and they do that to me. Yet I rejoice, intentionally choose to joy in the Lord. Eh? Not circumstantial, not conditional, and not fleeting. That's why it says, in some versions, it says, weeping may last for a night. That's the sense of a season, a period. But joy comes in the morning. That's the morning of new beginnings and promise in the Lord, which is forever in Him. So let's go to John 15, verse 11. We're going to look at some of the 3 texts that Jesus said. Jesus said this, I have told you these things, and some of them were hard things, so that my joy and my delight may be in you, and that your joy may be full and complete and overflowing. So the Amplified extends the word, hey, that this joy, the joy that Jesus spoke about, this delight and this gladness is an overflowing. It overflows. Because when you're in a safe place, now, Skev and I are sharing, because we are both people. Remember last year when someone brought a word about people not being safe, we both stood up. Because I know what it's like not to be safe. My childhood was filled with not being safe. And so I have a lot of things in my life which I've understood, which I come against all the time. But my own OCDs, my own stuff that I have, is a reaction, is a fearful reaction, hey, to not being safe as a child. So I know what it is not to be safe. But when you're safe, you relax in that place. The peace comes. And you know, when you choose that, no matter the circumstance of life, then it's the joy that just overflows. You just relax, and the joy overflows. There's a sense of contentment and completeness, even though the circumstances haven't changed. When our delight and gladness, friends, is in Jesus, in who He is and what He's done, in His presence and in His word, in His promises, no matter the external, no matter what others are doing, that joy that is rooted in Jesus, remember, that's secure. If it's rooted in materialism, it's rooted in whether people like me, it's rooted in how I compare myself to others or how I present myself on social media, that's fleeting. That's not rooted. That's not secure. That's not eternal. But if it's rooted in Jesus, there, remember that passage in Isaiah 40, strength will rise. As though strength will rise for those who wait upon the Lord, who look unto the Lord, who hope, who rest in the Lord. Strength will rise, the place of safety, the sense of fortress and stronghold. And notice it was this for Jesus. He rested in His Father. Remember, often the scriptures say Jesus had joy in His spirit, because He knew He was resting in His Father, in His goodness and His grace and His provision, what He had already provided. When we choose that place, that is our fortress, that is our stronghold, and it does offer us protection and as a defense. And that's what Jesus meant. That joy that is Jesus, that is within, begins to overflow. And I can face the world with confidence. I can face tomorrow with courage. I can take a stand, whether the circumstances change or not. Because the joy of the Lord in me is my strength. Let's go on to John 16, 20 to 22. And here Jesus speaks a lot about grief and sadness and contrasts this to how the world is looking. Skev spoke about that a little bit when he was sharing before worship. Jesus said, I assure you and most solemnly say to you that you will weep and you will grieve. In other words, in great mourning. We just spoke about some of that this morning. But the world will rejoice. We are seeing that. And let me just let you in on a secret that Skev shared. You're going to see more of that as the day comes till Jesus returns. You will be sorrowful, but your sorrow will be turned or transformed into joy. So for now you are in grief, but I will see you again. And then your hearts will rejoice, and no one will take away from you your great joy. You see, friends, when Jesus said that, the disciples probably didn't get it, but they did see Jesus again. They saw the resurrected, ascended Jesus. But we know the gospel language. So Jesus was saying, I will see you again and again at the end of time, because He was saying to them, many of you will lose your life, but I will see you again, and no one will take away that joy. So here's the key for me. His presence is everything. Jesus' presence is everything. In other words, I come today, just using this little example of my ears, I believe I will hear again. I do. I really believe that breakthrough's coming, and the Lord gave me a word about that. I'm struggling with my hearing, and the Lord is saying, but maybe you need to sort your spiritual hearing, Dave. I believe that. So I'm looking forward to saying, how am I going to resort my schedule to make more time to hear? I believe it. I wake up in that expectation. But when Jesus is present, you hear what I'm saying? When Jesus is present, and then my joy is in that you're present. I know who you are. I know what you've done. I know what you've promised. That is secure. There's an abounding, joyous expectation. And I feel safe here. I feel safe in His presence. And Jesus said, if you get to that place, and that joy, you know it is your strength, it's your safe place, no one's taking that away from you. They will take your success in the world. They'll take that. They'll take your physical feelings, your emotions. They will. Of course they will. It's going to go like this. Like watching a South African rugby game. Hey? It will. But not this. If this is a stronghold, a safe place, if this is that place, no one's going to take it away. It's impenetrable. That's what the Old Testament said. When David chose Jerusalem, it was because it was impenetrable. Why does the scripture talk about Zion? Because it was the prophetic understanding of the impenetrable nature. When you find your joy in the Lord, not there, not in whether the ifs or the what ifs, but there, then it becomes a safe place, a stronghold, secure. No one's going to take that away. His joy is true and lasting, not fleeting and circumstantial. So just the last verse I want to focus on today. And this is a big one. John 16, verse 24. Until now you have not asked, Abba, Daddy, Papa, for anything in my name. But now ask. And you see, when the English Bible just says, ask and you will receive, seek and you will find, it actually gets it wrong. Because it's a continuous word. Ask and keep asking, the same word used here. But now ask and keep on asking, and you will receive, that your joy may be full and complete. Now here's how it works. You know that Jesus wants your joy to be complete. And when you find your joy in Him and who He is and in His presence and what His presence brings and in His word and His promise, and when you rest in that place, it feeds, and you will ask. Because you rest, you secure in Him and who He is, and now you can ask. Because your joy is in Him, not the other way around. You don't ask to get joy so that what you receive is joy. You start with joy. And because you're in that place, I ask. Jesus was in joy, the feeding of the 5,000, or often in the scriptures, you say, I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you've kept these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to babes. He had joy, and he asked the Father. He prayed. Now ask and keep on asking that you will receive, that your joy may be full and complete. Jesus wills joy for you. But choose joy. Choose to place yourself there. Choose then when you found this joy of reaching His heart. When you know now that your joy there is, if I'm looking for strength, it's in choosing joy. And then from that safe place, you begin to ask. I believe we will see things. I think it's a change for us. We don't ask to get joy. We ask because we have joy in Him. And for me, that is the expectation. Because when our joy is in Jesus, our faith rises to believe that He desires for our joy. He desires for gladness and rejoicing and delight, this kind of dancing, to be complete and full and overflowing. The freedom to ask comes. Because of that joy in us, because we are in a safe place. I ask in joyful expectation, and I say, more, Lord. Hey. So friends, I want to encourage you. We can just choose joy today. And I know, and I was sharing this with Lana in a message. I just want to end with this. In sharing this with you at the moment, and I've shared this often from this point, but I want you to say we are wrestling with this as a church, and certainly Lindy and I and our family are wrestling with it as a family. We are wrestling with joy because we're not in a good space physically. Eh? But that's when you wrestle with it. That's when you grapple. You don't grapple when you're on the mountain and it's all working. You grapple with it here. You really grapple with it here. And I'm excited because there's the sense of this overflowing. He wants it to overflow. I believe that. And we're going to press in. We're going to press in for miracles, but from a place of knowing who we are in Him. So, I'm going to invite the worship team to come up. And before we end in a worship song,